Good day, everybody. Today, what we're going to go over is how to put together an animated object for use in the NASCAR Racing 2003 simulation. We will go over a little bit of modeling, as far as the structure of your script, and what goes into that, just to put it. So with that being said, that's our script. We're going to Max. There we have our object loaded here. In this case here, we have the Sprint Vision trailer as our example. And we've got here, the way you want to do this is putting your animated screens and your static object, as far as the trailer itself, in this case, as separate items, so that you can clearly define which frames are changing, which textures and MIPs are changing as compared to what stays static. So with that, we have our two objects here, and I can hide this to show this the animated frame itself, and we'll unhide our trailer again, so we have our two objects there. Our textures that we have applied here are both in bitmap format, and those are for the trailer itself as our static object, and in our individual frames. And in this case, we only need the very first frame defined in our model, so that when we export that out as a pass file, that's all you need, is that very first frame, because and I'll explain that in the script as far as how that applies for that first frame being in there. Going through the script, we'll go this from top to bottom. You have your remark lines that are defined with the pound sign. Those of you that are not familiar with how scripting works, anything defined with a hashtag or a pound sign in front of it is a remark line, just to give you clarification as to what's being done, I guess, in that particular line. In this case here, we have our two individual pass files exported, defined as all of our frames. In this case, this particular model has 52 all the way through, and I'll explain right now as far as what all these mean. Now, these variables that you apply should be lowercase. They need to be they can be in uppercase, but it would behoove you in constructing this, because all your functions, in this case this is an empty mesh, has to be capitalized. Otherwise the script will not be able to find it running it through Make 3DO. It will not be able to distinguish what you're trying to establish as a function. So in this case, it makes sense logically to name your variables or your containers to which the functions go into, and in lowercase. In this case, I got trailer min, which applies the function of an empty mesh, and the empty mesh, just as the name implies, it applies no mesh. There's nothing that shows. As I said, we have also our two individual pass files for each piece of the model, for our screen and our static object. And I'll explain that a little bit further a little later, I guess, in the video. We have our individual frames in the form of what MIPs we're using here, all 52. Where you want to start here as far as how to have your frame switch, and this is my further explanation of how you do that. What you're doing here is you're taking the first frame, your F01, which is using the full screen variable, which is our screen itself, which is already going to have that very first frame applied to it. Okay, so with that first frame applied, what you're telling the script is use that first frame with that already mapped model there, and this is the name of the mesh, just plain 01 in this case. And F02, you're going to make a copy of F01. Okay, so we're just copying that for now for each of these individual frames all the way through 52. And then here is where we switch with this modify texture base function again all in capital. We're telling what we want, what texture we want to show on these individual frames that we've just defined up here. F02, copy F01. So now on F2 we want to take frame 1 and switch it to frame 2, which is defined up here. Frame 2 is going to be Jumbo Screen 2 MIP. So this is how you get the frames to switch from the first frame to the next. So you got frame 1 is going to switch to frame 3, frame 1 to frame 4, and all the way down the line, all the way through all 52 frames. Okay, with that being done, we're now defining when those particular frames show, and which frames. So we apply our variable screenAn, which is abbreviated for screen animation. We're applying a state switch variable for animation, and I'll go into a little bit more detail of how that's applied once you put the object in sandbox. Laying out these individual frames, we have all 52 of them here. We want to start number of frames out at 0.00, show no frames. And the conventions for this is you apply, in this case, F01, which is what we defined up here. This is where our screen object, our physical screen object is. We want it to show on the first frame. You put your variables for which frame it is and at what frame. And that goes for each consecutive frame. F02 on frame 2, F03 on frame 3, all the way through F52 on frame 52. And these are separated by the variable, comma space, and the frame number. Okay, then what we're doing nextly is combining those two individual pieces, the frame itself and the static trailer, into one object. This is what this variable will do, and I have it labeled as combined. Applying the function group. In this case, since we only have the two pieces, I'm taking my blank screen, which is just the static trailer itself with no animated frames, and also the frames itself. So we're combining those two objects, the frame, or the frames, the screen itself, and the static object. That's what this will do, and that's defined. The blank screen is defined up here previously. So our blank screen here, and that's going to take our static trailer with our empty screen. Okay, so we're combining those two objects together in this variable group function, and then here what I've done is I've actually applied, for my own reference here, another empty mesh frame to be used in this case the weekend switch. And what I've come to find, as far as when scripting, as far as running the script through Make 3DO and when it produces the model, it doesn't necessarily care for using the use of a variable more than once. So not only for my own reference as far as which empty mesh is used in which switch, but also to remove the redundancy as far as running the script through Make 3DO is. So not using that same variable more than once. So I've got a separate trailer min, and for our next application here we have our weekend switch defined, which is state switch variable weekend, and we've set the variable as a weekend switch, and these can be named however you like. I've just used more logical terms, I guess, for these containers or these variables. Okay, as I said, state switch variable is applied, and I've got a footnote here, a remark line. 0 is for testing, 1 for warm up, practice and qual, and 2 is for race. Those are already predefined as far as the game is concerned. That's just to put the remark line in there so it's known what variable is being applied to which session. In this case, in this weekend switch for testing, we're applying the trailer min B, which is no object at all during testing. During practice, qual, and warm-up, we are applying just the blank screen, which is just the trailer itself with an empty screen, no animated screens. And for race, we have both the static object with the animated frames as we defined here earlier in the combined group. So during race, you'll have the static trailer itself as well as the animated screens in full function there. With that defined, this particular model also has a population switch, which becomes very handy for those that have a low-end system and would like to turn such items off during play. So that this is done by the depress of the O key in game, and this is just a simple state switch variable population. This is our function, and we've set the variable up as population switch. And just as this line presents here, 0 means it's off, which is using the trailer min as I defined earlier at the top here, which is just an empty mesh. And again, like I said, this was just to keep it separate, not using that same variable twice, but also to clarify which one is being used in each state switch. So when you press the O key, it'll be off. You push it again, and it comes back on using this weekend switch. Everything available in the weekend switch. Lastly, but not least, the output of the 3DO using the function output, and we are using as our output, we're using the container for population switch, and as it could be suggested, the flow of your script from top to bottom is key to getting everything to the final 3DO. So as can be seen here and what is presented here, we've defined everything by using this population switch. Everything done above this population switch is going to be included in the final 3DO. The population switch has the weekend switch in it, all the frames and everything. So as I said, everything above this point where the output, where the 3DO output is going to be produced here, is going to be introduced into this 3DO. So name this 3DO over here, and as you type this in here, the trailer underscore video screen, as this case is, that is exactly what it'll name the 3DO once you run the script through make 3DO. That is what it'll name your 3DO. So that is a pretty quick rundown, I guess, as far as how the scripting works. Once that's done, and probably a fair mention to this one here is I'm using Notepad as this here. What you'll want to do is for your PSG scripts, in most cases you're not going to have a file association for that in the game. There are ways to ensure that you have a proper PSG script so that the game, I shouldn't say the game, but the Make 3DO recognizes it as a true PSG. You don't necessarily care to want to use you could probably try that, but if you don't have that file association in your system for what a PSG script is used for, chances are if you just start off with a text document and save it as a .psg, it won't work. What's your best course of action to do there is to grab the there's a NR2003 tools pack at the US PITS that has ready-made PSG scripts there that you can use as a gut there. That would probably be the best course. That's just a fair mention there. Okay, with all that said, moving into your two separate objects that you have here in Max, we need to export those out as a pass file. And I have those here, one for my screen, one for the screen, and one for the trailer static object itself. The texture for that static object and all the individual frames for the animated screen itself. So once you've got all those defined, you can, and I'll go into, I guess, in another video later on, as far as how to produce these individual frames. There's yeah, I'll leave that for another video. But moving forward with this, once you have all your individual frames, your texture for your static object, your 2 pass files, and of course your PSGs saved, you want to put that into your Make3DO. And I've got those all defined here. I have the pass, all the individual frames, texture for the static object for the screen itself. And delete this. And the pass for the static object itself. Okay, and then my script. So all you're going to do then is bring up a command prompt and type in, actually point to where your Make3DO directory is at, to which all the items involved are located. And then from there, what you want to do is type in Make3DO, which is the application itself. Type in the parameter -s, which is for a script, and then type in the name of your script itself. In this case, vs_trailer.psg. You do not have any other parameters to apply to this particular model as far as a shine for an environment MIP or anything like that, so we don't need any other parameters. So from there, all you have to do is push enter, and what that essentially does then is produce that 3DO. If you have 3D SimEd, you can open that up and you can see your fully constructed model. Go ahead and close that, and that names it exactly the same way as it was done in the script itself, as trailer_video screen 3DO. So that much is done, and from there you can take your model, and you'll obviously need to make all your individual MIPs for your static object and your individual frames. And once you have all those made, you will apply those to your track. And in this case, go to our track to which we've applied, put those into your track. Once those are all in there, bring up your sandbox, go to your object view, and insert that into your track. And we've already got that done here. So with your object installed into the track, as it's done here with the yellow bounding box, and obviously I have a different texture applied to this particular installation. This is applied to our Darlington 60th application. So we're using the more retro look to that trailer. Now going into how to apply the animation to get it working in the game, we go to our functions, our properties for that object here, and with that highlighted there, you want to type in animation and add it so that you have that node, and where that comes from is from what you defined in the script, the PSG itself originally, with the state switch variable animation. That's where this comes into play, applying the object to sandbox. You have your animation, and then you want to apply the number of frames as 52 in this case. Want to make sure that it's set to fixed, obviously, otherwise you won't be able to do this. Okay, animation node is applied, your number of frames, and how many frames per second. In this case, for this application, 15 frames a second seems to be pretty realistic. Not too fast, not too slow. So that being done, as I've presented everything here, this is all working beautifully, and with no problems as far as the fluidness of the frames in game. And I think one other thing I guess I'll go over as far as applying and exporting out your pass files. With having the two separate objects as we do here, as you'd want to do, quick little shortcut that you can do instead of having to reset Max altogether to produce each individual pass file. As you've got both of these two objects in here, what you can do is just go ahead and select the item that you want to make a pass file for. Well, in this case, what I'll do is I'll select the one I don't want to be included in the pass, delete it to isolate. You do not want to hide the object. If you hide the object and produce and export your pass file, it will include that still in there, in your pass file, and you don't want that. You want just the particular mesh or model into the pass file. So in this case, we want to export out our screen itself, our animated screen. In this case, is our jumbo screen pass. Export out your pass, and then once you've got that done, do an undo, bring it back. Now we'll select the screen, delete that, export out your pass for your static object, in this case the trailer video screen, and then once you're done with that, do an undo. This way you have everything that you need in there as far as going in and testing it. Once you produce your 3DO, you'll have everything still in Max in order to adjust it. Let's say, for example, if the screen is clipping or you might not have the right orientation, maybe you need to move the positioning of it in Max, what have you. You can still come back here and refer to all this here without having to reset. I obviously didn't go over how to map any of this. This is assuming all that has been done already. But the key thing in here, as I mentioned, is to have two separate objects, two separate pieces to define your animated screen itself, and then what stays static. In an effort to keep things optimized and not have to repeat, say, just the static object and have individual frames into that. That's the best approach. In that, like I said, in the effort of keeping everything optimized, that's the best approach to take to this. So I believe that's pretty simple way of being able to describe how to apply animated scripting to an otherwise static model, to an item for the NASCAR Racing 2003 simulation. I hope you found this video useful, and I thank you for watching.